Good morning.
Hey Jack, how you doing, buddy?
Uh, I'm hanging in there for an old guy.
You ready to rock?
Yeah, I have no idea. I didn't see any agenda or
Oh
itinerary,
no,
or
I don't
we're
do that. No,
we're just gonna have a chat.
we're just gonna have a chat. Yeah. Why
Oh, I
did
see
Nick
you got
Nick sent? Yeah.
your
Well, I
beer
wish you
sitting on the counter.
if you were here, I'd give you some beer.
Where's here?
South of Etobicoke.
Out the Etobicoke. Okay. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna press record, and we're just gonna chat. This is a little different than the Nick experience, but we're just gonna
And the dog could bark, okay,
yeah
because I'm home. I'm
let
home.
let the
That's,
bark let the dog bark.
that's the security system.
And you don't have headphones, right?
I can put them on if you want.
Only because the crosstalk, otherwise, when I talk, it shuts you down like the way Zoom works. But
Okay.
just give it a
Want
go.
me to get them?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Hi.
Yes.
Oh, here you are. Okay.
Okay.
My wife was borrowing them, so I couldn't find them. Uh, she went away this morning for a visit with some friends, so that's good. I didn't have to go to the office to talk to you.
Okay, cool.
We have an office in the house, but because we live in rural route nowhere,
Yeah.
this cell service sort of sucks. So
Mm.
I try and do Wi-Fi. I try and do everything over Wi-Fi, but
Can you hear me? Let's hear some Jack. So I can't hear you. Did
can
it
you hear me
change?
now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me
Yeah.
in the headphones?
I, I can hear you in the headphones, but you can't hear me talking when I plug in.
Huh.
I
When
don't
you
know.
when you plug in, the bottom of Zoom, you see there's a microphone icon. Click the arrow next to that after you plug in and see if you can change the mic. Not yet.
Kind of icon am I looking for?
Now I hear you. There's a microphone icon in the bottom left. I think it's a microphone. I mean, in my interface, it's in the bottom left. I don't know on an iPad, but I got a mic, and then there's like a chevron beside the mic, and I hit that, and I can pick which mic to use.
Huh. I don't see that, buddy.
Oh yeah, you know what? Don't worry about it. I will when you're talking, I'll shut up. That's what we'll do, okay? So I won't talk over you, and then you'll pause, and then I'll come in.
That might be hard for both of us because I talk a lot. Apparently, you do too. That's your job.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you now, people don't want to hear me talk about the CN Tower. They want to hear you. So I'm gonna
Okay.
I'm gonna start recording, and we're gonna have a great chat here. Okay.
Okay.
Jack, welcome to Toronto Mic'd.
Hey, Mike. Glad to be here. Thanks a bunch for the invite.
Whereabouts do we find you today?
I'm at my house. I live very close to Collingwood, near Blue Mountain, and have an office up this way, and still commute to the city when I really need to.
So, Jack, do you deem Thornbury too small to mention by name that you need to say near Collingwood? Thornbury is known to Torontonians.
Okay. Yeah, I know that on a Saturday morning. Trust me. There's a lot of people walking around with a coffee.
And former Q107 radio star Jeff Woods proudly calls Thornbury home.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's right. Okay, I'll start using it. Thornbury, near Thornbury is my home then. How's that work for you?
Much better. Now,
Okay.
let's give some love to Nick Iones because Nick Iones has a podcast called Building Toronto Skyline, and he wanted to do an episode about the CN Tower. And we decided we needed somebody who worked on the CN Tower 50 years ago. And you were our guest on Building Toronto Skyline. So I'm literally poaching you from Nick. So thanks for doing this.
Oh, glad to be here. Glad to talk. Glad to talk about the team, and it was great meeting Nick. And I'm going to go out and buy a book and see what he said about our fantastic city.
Now, you were an iron worker apprentice working on the CN Tower 50 years ago?
That's correct. 50 years ago, I had hair, Nick. I had hair, Mike. A lot of it.
Well, listen, it happens, to the great ones that they lose the hair. But I had a guest, I won't name his name, but a rock star guest who was here recently who has one heck of a wig. Have you considered wearing like a wig?
Not a chance. My friends would never let me do that. Or my wife.
Okay. Take me back. Actually, before I ask you the obvious question, which is how you end up working at the CN Tower, your name is Jack Mesley. Do you have any relation to former CBC journalist Wendy Mesley?
And well, that's amazing. Yes, Wendy Mesley is my first cousin. So my dad and her dad were brothers. Yeah.
That's a fun fact. Now, Wendy Mesley has also been on this program. So you're both FOTMs now, Friends of Toronto.
Wow. She's an awesome lady. Just to watch her for all those years when she was started out as a good news reporter in the old days. It was, and look at how far she went in her career. Awesome. Just awesome.
Yeah, and here's a fun small world story before we get to the CN Tower, which is I mentioned Jeff Woods lives in Thornbury, and he was on Q107 for many, many years. Also on Q107 for many, many years, Maureen Holloway. And Maureen Holloway and Wendy Mesley currently work together.
Oh, what are they doing together? Because Maureen's a famous name as well.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And they had a podcast called Woman of Ill Repute, but now I think it's more of like a Substack, like you subscribe to their writings.
Okay. Oh, that's good. That's cool. We'll search that. I'd like to do that. Yeah. Thanks.
Amazing. Now, please tell me, let's go in the time machine. Tell me how you ended up working on the CN Tower 50 years ago.
Long story short, come from a family of ironworkers. My dad and his two brothers got involved with the ironworkers in the mid to late 50s. My dad came back from the war in Korea. He was there with NATO forces. Came home, and his youngest brother had started ironworking, and he talked his next two brothers into ironworking as well. And where they actually started, I should know that, but it was in and around Toronto, Hamilton area, and then they traveled a lot extensively. They actually worked on the NORAD system, in Hudson Bay, Frobisher Bay. Can you imagine going there in the 50s? Not a chance, but yeah, we were just little guys, my brother and I. So yeah, and we got a bunch of relatives, Mike. Like I think at one time there was 12 or 15 of us with the same last name in the ironworkers.
So it's in your blood. It's good to have iron in your blood, right?
Apparently, not too much of it isn't healthy, but I guess the rest is good. Yeah. It was. So came out of high school, wanted to be an architect actually, and went through high school, with those prep courses to do that, and then I decided, what, that's a lot of years, that's a lot of money. I think I'll just go to work and check it out and see how it goes for a year or so, and here I am 50 years later.
So specifically, it's amazing. And, we'll talk about how they start construction on the CN Tower. They started in 1973. So I guess the construction crews move in February 6th, 1973. When do you join the crews, and when do you begin working on the CN Tower?
So I started my apprenticeship at the Bank of Montreal, which was then It was in the basement. So we were doing, when I started, we were just coming to street level. That was my first time there was late December 73, early 74. And I spent most of that summer all the way through till the next Christmas, a year. And we got to about the 50th floor. And all the time we're on that building, we're watching the CN Tower. So, I'm a kid. I'm thinking, I need to go over there. That's higher than this building, right?
Yeah.
And found out the name of the fella that was a foreman running what they call the raisin gang, the guys that were putting the steel together. And found him at Christmas and called him, and he said, "Well, kid, come on over and we'll give you a shot." And that was, I think it was January or January of 70. What would that be? 74. And they were already, the restaurant level was done, Mike. So I went there I was there when they were putting the Sky Pod together.
So to give some context here, so I'm still not born yet, Jack. So we're in February 1974. I'm in
Right.
development. Okay, I'm under construction.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Uh,
in February 1974, the CN Tower is already the tallest structure in Canada. So it sounds like you're working on another impressive building, and you're watching this tallest structure in Canada being built, and you're like, I want to work on that.
yeah. Oh, for sure. And, we didn't realize then what kind of an icon it was going to be, now. Like, and we know it's an icon. Like, but, I just thought, yeah, no, I need to go over there and check that out. And I was working with a fantastic crew. And I was encouraged by the journeyman that I was working with to just go give it a try. If you can, get over there and do it. So, yeah, I was very fortunate to get and to get to the top of the house. I called the right guy apparently.
Well, now I need to know. You mentioned you didn't know exactly how iconic it was going to be, but you knew this was going to be the tallest
Yeah,
freestanding structure in the world.
right.
So, how much more impressive do you need it to be, Jack?
Well, well, it's hard to leave friends and family, and those guys I grew that they were the first crew that I started my apprenticeship with. So they were part of my life for a long, long time, and I can still name their names. So
Right. And,
yeah,
and
it was hard to leave there, and I was very fortunate to get accepted because I'm sure there were a lot of other guys looking to go there, and being in the family name sort of helped too, right?
I'll bet all those Mesleys working
Yeah.
working around. Did, did you call? I think I wrote it down what you called it. Did you call it the Raisin Gang?
Raising,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, with a
not
G.
raising, but we did do that, the raising gang thing. No, raising gang. So it's actually the crew that puts the steel up. So in our industry, there's the guys that you see actually taking the steel from the crane, putting it in place, putting the wrenches in, putting the bolts in, cut the piece loose, and go get another piece. That's what most people see as an iron worker. But there's so many other. There's welders. There's bolting crew. There's the survey crew. There's all of the skilled trades are involved, and it's an awesome industry.
Now I was reading about you and that you were one of the riggers who is known as free walkers.
Oh yeah.
So what does that mean, free walkers?
I don't know where that free walker thing comes from, but in the old days, there wasn't fall protection. So, we now have legislation in place since the early 90s when it was mandated that we had to have fall protection when you were working at height. So now it's called law. So working at heights, legislation, you actually have to be trained. You have to take courses on working at heights. There were a lot of fatalities in some industries where we're falling from heights, and we still are. We just got to do a better job at it. And in our industry, I think we did a fantastic job of adopting that fall protection. But in those days, there wasn't fall protection. Like you look at pictures, the ironworkers only have a tool belt on, like, and a hard hat. So So yeah, it was interesting. So we sort of, I guess we did sort of walk free of, of all that fall protection equipment that we wear now. Yeah, like we climbed the tower. Like, yeah.
So, okay, I almost, in a moment, I'm going to have you walk me through like a typical day because I'm trying to understand exactly what you iron workers are doing up there. But were there any casualties? Did anybody die in the construction of the CN Tower?
You know, in our world, no, but there was a fatality on a windy day. I believe it was a surveyor or a project manager was on the ground, and a piece of plywood blew up, knocked him down. He hit his head, and he died. Unfortunately, he died.
No, so sorry to hear about the fatality. That's one too many, but it is amazing that you free walkers, because I'm thinking,
Iron workers, not free
I know.
walkers.
I think I'll blame the Toronto Star for that free walkers nonsense.
Okay, there you go.
Because I'm reading the Toronto Star article and
Yeah,
they put in quotes free walkers, and I'm like, oh, that must be like a term. But you're telling
yeah.
me no.
Well, walking free, I guess, makes you a free walker. Yeah. Anyway, um,
But like today, I have
we were pretty free, Mike.
so I'm
But
going to have you walk me through a typical day, but I got to understand. I'm assuming once you're up at those heights working and you're not tethered or anything, it must be awfully windy. It's amazing you guys weren't just blowing off the CN Tower.
it was, yeah, windy is a yeah. Well, we had a lot of days shut down because of wind, but there were other projects to do. Um, uh, we could we could actually go back down inside the tower. There were more than just putting up the antenna, more than just building the sky pod. I mean, you can walk from ground to restaurant, well, ground to sky pod in a stairwell. So somebody had to put those stairwells in, right? It's the stairs. So lots of rigging in there, the slip form. Yeah, there were things, lots of activities where we could go down and do things where we didn't need to use the crane, follow up work, bolting, welding, that kind of thing.
Now, okay, so walk me through a typical day. I'm just curious, a typical day for Jack Mesley 50 years ago as you're working on what would be the world's tallest freestanding structure.
Boy, I wish I had wrote it all down, Mike. But yeah, so morning starts. It's an elevator ride, a long elevator ride. It's an old rack and pinion. So they had construction hoists or construction elevators, and the crews got in the elevators. Now you have to remember too, there were crews that were on night shifts coming down, and crews going back on day shifts going up. So really quite a busy place, and staggered shifts. Even then, we had staggered shifts so everybody could get to where they needed to go. Elevator ride to the 1,500-foot level, which was basically the restaurant-ish kind of thing, somewhere between the 5 floors of restaurant and the roof. Then there was another, like a hoist. We could call it an elevator, but it ran on cables. It was a small cage. I think two or three of us could get in it at a time. There was an operator that we looked at, or radio. I can't remember. I think we could look at him, and it went to the sky pod level, so another 200 or 300 feet up on the outside of the tower, and then drop you off at the sky pod and start to erect steel on the sky pod. So all that steel came from the ground, to some of it came to the roof of the restaurant, like as a staging area. Then it got picked up from there and actually put into place by the connectors that were in that crew.
Now, well, how long would it take you to get to the top where you needed to do your work?
Geez, you know what? I don't remember that far back. Like, I don't know, probably half an hour or an hour, like to get
Oh,
actually
wow.
up where you needed to be.
So,
Yeah,
okay,
at
so
least.
like
Yeah.
maybe an hour up and then an hour down. That's 2 hours. So, is it fair to say once you're up there for the entire shift?
Oh yeah, we didn't. Oh yeah, there was no coming. There was no coming down from there. You'd go and try and find a place where you could get warmed up when you needed to, but no, you didn't. You didn't. There was no coming to the ground till quitting time. That's for sure.
And how long was a typical shift? Like, are these like
And we were 10, I think we were 10 or 12-hour day. We were 12-hour days. Yeah.
Could you make coffee up there?
No, you packed what you were going to have. Yeah, there was no coming down.
And like, okay, when you needed, when nature called, what, you had buckets or
Yeah,
something?
there was some rudimentary washroom facilities. Yeah, to do what nature called. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now, you mentioned you weren't sure, you weren't aware of how iconic it would be, but so what, when you're with the workers on that length of time, you're building this tower, uh, like, I'm just curious for a sense of the camaraderie. Like, did you guys realize you're a part of history?
Oh, um, yeah. I think we all knew what we were building. That's for sure. And I was an apprentice, so in those days, apprentices didn't have any rights. Like, yeah, it was interesting, but we were all a team. It was like I think it's just every day showed up, went to work, trusted each other, had some fun, went and had a couple of beers, and started again tomorrow. I think that's how life was then, and I think it's pretty similar to the way life is for us as the iron workers now. Even yeah,
Okay, we're going to talk soon. We'll talk about what you're up to these days. For sure. I know you're the president of the Ontario Erectors Association, but
yeah,
50 or still 50 years ago. What a time to be alive. So now I'm curious about Olga. What can you tell us about Olga and what your role would be when Olga, the Sikorsky helicopter, is bringing the antenna into place?
yeah. So um, before the antenna, so after the sky pod was steel was erected, the next step was to take the crane down, and it was a big crane, like big hoist. It had to go to the ground and back up. Basically, had to have 3 or 4 thousand feet of cable on it to go up and down. That was that was the first phase. Then once we dismantled it, it got on the ground. Then it was time to start the antenna. So I remember going to the island airport as a crew that was going to be involved with erecting the antenna and taking the crane down. And we met the three pilots over there. They had, I think the helicopter, it's basically a crane. It came, it came in a plane. They didn't fly it. I think it was dismantled and came in a plane and then got flown from somewhere to the island airport. And we went to meet the pilots and went through some procedures with them. And that's when Paul, he was going to be the guy that talked to the pilot and the crane operator in the helicopter. And we went through some procedures with them, and then they came and flew over to the base of the CN Tower and landed. And we talked to all the ground crew that was there that was going to be working with it to pick up the pieces that came up. And all those pieces, they were like cans. So if you can picture a 5-sided can of 1 inch plate or more, and lots of bolts, and in segments that the helicopter could actually um, pick up and take up with other ancillary, like it had to have bolts. So the bolts were inside the can when it came up. So we had bolts to finish erecting before we could erect the next piece. We could finish bolting it. And so we met the pilots. That was quite an interesting thing. They were all Vietnam vets. Helicopter was huge. I remember the props. The prop wash was a 70 or 65 miles per hour. So I'll say 100K down wash on top of you. So like when it came over top, you knew it was gonna, like, it was windy and it generated static electricity. So we had to ground the can that we called the wand, and you had to hook the wand onto the can so you didn't get shocked from the static electricity when you grabbed the piece. Yeah, so you actually touch the piece. Like it's not, it just doesn't fly over and drop it on there. It's windy, it's loud. Um, you can't talk to anybody beside you. It's all hand signals. We were hand signaling Paul. He's talking to the helicopter pilot. So go back to the helicopter. So it capacity is around 20,000 pounds, so 10 ton. Um, it has a hoist on in the back of it because it looks like a giant dragonfly, right? Like, and it has a hoist under the belly, and there's a pilot sitting in a bubble behind. He's the crane operator, and then there's two pilots in the helicopter, a co-pilot and a pilot, and all three of them can talk to Paul. We can't talk to Paul, which is strange to me that we didn't all have like. But in those days, what technology? Are you kidding? Like, so um, when we when our first pick, I'm telling the stories now, but our first pick was to take the boom out of the crane, which was a big boom. It was probably 150-foot boom, horizontal boom, like a big tower crane, like you see on all the condos. It doesn't go up and down. It stays horizontal, so it doesn't loft. It's a big boom. So engineers figured out center of gravity. We went up early, before the helicopter got there, did some of the dismantling that we need to do. We took smaller pins out, or took the main pins of the boom out, put small pins in. So theoretically, when the crane came, it'd be easier just to knock them out in the way it went. We took the cables that hold the boom in place. We put smaller pins in there. We got a lot of stuff ready, and I remember it was quite a day, Mike. The first day to have that, there was no trial run. That helicopter didn't come up and hover over us, and we figured it out. It was like day one. This is what you're doing. There was no practice. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, it
there's
was a
no dress
wild
rehearsal.
ride.
There's no dress rehearsal. It's we're doing this. We're doing it live.
Yeah, we did. We did it live. I remember they evacuated the tower. There was no other workers. Um, we went up way too early in the morning. I think it was still March, so it was cold. We were doing a max pick, so all the maximum capacity the helicopter could handle. They actually had limited fuel on board because they had to have that capacity. Uh, it wasn't as smooth as we would have liked it to have gone. Trust me, we actually had to cut some of the crane apart, and the helicopter had, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes of fuel left. Otherwise, it would have been catastrophic. So, yeah, we were very fortunate and in those days, the world didn't know that. It was just the smoothest thing that ever happened, right?
Well, that's why you're here. We're getting the real talk, but it sounds like it's always a good idea to have a plan B.
Yeah, the plan B was to run and hide if we're going to run out of fuel because they would have cut it loose. The,
Yeah, that's
the
plan C.
helicopter
Come on.
wasn't crashing, trust me.
Come on, Jack. That's plan C. Okay. That's plan C.
No, we were organized as we could be, and we had a fantastic team. And I think there was 10 of us up there, basically some guys around the tower crane itself, and some of us up on the boom and the mast. You can see those pictures. The journeyman ironworkers that I was working with were like super skilled. They knew what was going on, and yeah, it was. I think. I think that was probably the most amazing part, other than the topping off. The last piece, right?
So, did you guys refer to this giant Sikorsky helicopter as Olga? Like, is that what you guys referred to the helicopter as?
Yeah, that was her name. She had a name, just like a boat and planes. That was her name. It was Olga.
Olga,
Yeah,
and is it 39 pieces of that antenna that were lifted up by Olga?
yeah, and I think there was some other. Yeah, 39 helicopter rides probably for sure. I'm not sure if they counted the damper and all of that kind of stuff in there, some ancillary stuff that went on, but 39 picks. Yeah, I guess that's probably how many cans there were. But we did more lifts, taking the crane down. There's probably 10 or 12 of those,
Right.
and the tower sections had to come out, and Yeah, yeah, you're bringing back memories now, boy.
Well, Jack, it's just amazing that you pulled it off, right? Like, what an ambitious vision. And again, like you said, the story is written that it was smooth as silk. And here we are learning that,
It,
you know,
it was as smooth as silk could be. But you got to give credit to the. There was an engineer that came up with this dream that worked for Canron, and young guy, brilliant guy. Worked with him for years. His name was Jerry Morrow, and he came up with the plan and the design and all the work that went on in the yard, and the crews that tried to figure out how it was going to happen, and how do you get a can on top of a can and not have it slip off. So there was these big ears, and we had smaller bolts to connect it with, so we didn't have to worry about pinning it and everything while the helicopter was still holding on. Like there was a lot of planning, like way more planning than I ever knew as a 19-year-old. Trust me, I know now how much planning went into this. So
well,
yeah.
as an apprentice there, they weren't going to let you plan anything. So,
No, the only thing they let me plan was how to climb up inside there and stick a boulder, a bolt, or a pin or something in a hole
and you
and hurry
mentioned,
up.
yeah, and hurry up. You mentioned Canron. So is that who was paying you during this work?
Yeah, the Canron erected the restaurant level and the pod and the antenna, and I worked for them for a long time.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you mentioned March. We should just remind people it was March 1975, and that's why we're talking about 50 years. So all this work is happening in March 1975. It all finishes on April 2nd, 1975. So almost exactly 50 years ago, 50 years ago this month. I'm just going to remind people, people know this, but 553 meters, which if you don't speak metric, that's 1,815. So 1,815 feet. And of
Yeah.
course, here's my question, Jack. I have a few more, but you know how, are you an NFL fan?
Oh yeah.
Okay. You know how
Yeah.
there's a Miami Dolphins team that had a perfect season?
Oh yeah. I was around for that.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Now,
Mercury Morris, Larry Zonka, Bob Greasy. Yeah.
so every season, the those who are still with us, they celebrate when a team has their first loss. Okay, because they take such great pride that they're the only undefeated team in NFL history. There was a Tom Brady team that lost in the Super Bowl that was on their way to an undefeated season, and then they got upset by the Giants, I think. And
Yeah.
so,
Yes.
yeah. So here's my question. I think you know where maybe you know where I'm going, but the CN Tower was the world's tallest freestanding structure until 2009. And I am curious, I need the real talk on this, Jack. When you learned in 2009 that the Burj Khalifa in Dubai was taller than the CN Tower, were you upset? Like, were you ticked off?
Not a chance. I just wish I had been there to work on
Hey,
it.
you're a better man than me, Jack. I'd be pissed off.
Yeah, and you know what? God bless all those guys that work there because yeah, they know what it's like. It's windy. It's it's not cold. It's super hot there. So you got to give them credit for everything that went on there. Like what a fantastic project, and the technology that they have now for elevators and staging equipment, and because you don't have enough cable to go to the ground on your crane, so they had to stage everything. Like oh, it's the planning's fantastic. Yeah, I gotta say congratulations to all of them. 2009, I was a lot smarter than 2000 or 1973. Trust me.
Okay, so now it's interesting because I off the top I referenced Nick Ianni's podcast, which is called Building Toronto Skyline. We talked to I think it's Pinnacle. We talked to the people building the skyscraper at One Young Street,
Oh yeah,
and the penthouse is going to be the same height as the observation deck of the CN Tower,
yeah,
which is
yeah. Well,
amazing.
it's a very cool project. Like, it's too bad it got delayed the way it did. And but I have a good friend that owns the company that's erecting the curtain wall, and they're just getting going at it hard right now. So it's a very cool project. I've talked to him about going to visit and having a walkthrough with him. So we'll see. Yeah, great
Very,
job.
very cool. So just before we leave the CN Tower in 50 years ago, I'm just wondering, I hear about how it sways up there of the wind and just was there anything like I mean I'm sure there were several things, but anything you can share that was unique about this particular structure? It was so well, so tall, but obviously, but it's so unique. I'm just wondering what had to be considered that maybe the average person wouldn't be aware of.
Well, it's made to move. It's made to move. There's actually two big rings inside what you look at the antenna. Now it's covered in well, we called it plastic, but it's covered in an epoxy. So there's air that runs between the steel portion of the antenna and what you see on the outside because it's shielded for frost, snow, ice, all that stuff. So it's heated in there. But inside there, Mike, there's two dampers. They call them dampers. So they're big rings that hang inside on the antenna, and they're filled with lead sheets because we couldn't lift it all at once. So the ring came up, then the sheets came up, and then they loaded the ring, and so it works as a damper. So it swings opposite direction that the wind is blowing in there. So when we were erecting it, oh, the tower moved for sure. Like you could sit on top of the can and it would move a couple of feet in the wind, like it just swaying like sitting in a boat.
Right.
You're sitting in a boat and you get a wave and you're just sort of, yeah, yeah, windy. And when you sat on the top, like I have a photo in the house. I think my kids all have the photo in their houses too, of standing on the top of the antenna, holding on to the lightning rod, and you could feel that baby moving like. Yeah, I moved a couple of feet, 18 inches, 24 inches
Well,
for
that's
sure.
significant. Like
Maybe more.
that's a lot of sway.
Well, if it didn't move, it'd break, right?
Right.
So it needs to move or it'd break, right? So it's made to move.
So do you have this photo? That's you that your kids have, and you have this photo of you up there.
Oh, there's a couple of them, yeah, but this one is on top of the
Well,
whole
can
mountain.
you send me like could you email me your favorite photo of you up there?
Yeah, sure. I could do that. No, there's no electronics, so it's going to be like a scan or a
Well,
photograph or something like that.
that's
Or
okay. Whatever you
yeah,
have,
I can get it to you for sure.
that'll
Yeah.
be the photo I tie to this episode. I think that's totally
Okay.
red. And I've okay, and I'm gonna ask you a moment about, I'm gonna share a few of my thoughts on the CN Tower because I'm
Yeah.
50 years old, so I don't know Toronto skyline without the CN Tower. So I'll tell you how I feel and then how you feel 50 years later. But I find it interesting that you finished that CN Tower in April 1975, 50 years ago, but the
Yeah.
public opening is June 26, 1976. Do you have any idea why there's over a year gap between
Oh,
completion and opening?
oh, they had to finish it. Like
Okay. Okay. So,
they had to pour concrete, put windows in,
okay.
drywall, finish elevators, lighting, safety checks. Yeah, oh yeah, like it's so much work after we leave. Like we build a high rise tower
Right.
now, like 160 Front Street just finished, right? So that I'm using that as a new example because that was one of the last steel structures that went up, office towers. Like so, steel does commercial, mostly commercial because they want open space, right? So you get 80 feet of open space. You can put your office wherever you want it. Residential, like condos, they do smaller spans, more walls, um, and they have to go in and finish everything as well. So you build the tower, you build the steel, you take the cranes down normally, and then all the other finishing trades come in. It takes at least a year, HVAC, drywall, flooring, tile, walls, wallpaper, everything, right? That makes it, and then they have to move in furniture.
Right.
So yeah,
Okay, I guess it's the definition of the word finished. So the CN Tower is finished on April 2nd, 1975, but you still got to paint the thing.
you got to paint it, you got to put drywall in, you got to build the kitchen so you can do the revolving restaurant. Remember, is
Of
that
course.
it was one of the first revolving restaurants. Remember in the 70s or in the 80s, that was the coolest thing. You got to get the full 360 of the city. not much to look at in the city in those days. Trust me. Royal York was probably, well, other than the two TD towers, there were only two then. And the Bank of Montreal, BMO, it was only at 50 floors. Commerce Court, I don't know what they call that now. Commerce Court, is it still called?
I think so.
Bank of, yeah. So King and Bay was nothing what it looked like now. What it looks like now. I mean, we built the podium there for the banking podium. We built another high rise just one street over. The convention center. Then we did two more TD towers. Well, we did Roy Thompson Hall. Yeah, like the Sky Dome, Air Canada, Scotiabank Arena. Yeah, you just walk down the sidewalk and point at stuff, and I get accused of that. My kids say, "Dad, you didn't build everything." You know what I mean?
All right, so this leads to my question. So I wanted a quick question. Were you at the grand opening in June 1976
Of the tower?
of the CN Tower? Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I was actually, I can't remember where exactly it was in 76, but we left the tower. A gang of us left the tower.
Yeah.
Some of us went to another project in the city. I went north for a few months, and then I ended up that year at the Olympic Stadium in Montreal.
Oh.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's another story.
that's another episode. Okay, maybe they call that the big O, so I think they still owe you money on that.
They still owe somebody money. I'll tell you what, I don't want to get into politics, but it was still a super project, Mike. Like, you know, now I'm 20, I'm driving down the road to Montreal, and you know what? There's Montreal is a pretty cool city in 1974, 5. Yeah.
Well, it still is. My daughter's there right now. It's a damn cool city.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. Yeah. 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 I fell in love there a couple of times.
Only a couple? That's another episode too.
Mm-hmm.
So looking back 50 years later, firstly, I guess, again, I can't believe I'm talking to somebody who was up there working on this 50 years ago, Jack. So thanks for doing this. But like, where do you go from there? I know sure, Olympic Stadium is another exciting project, and but I'm like, once you're work as a young apprentice, you're doing the world's tallest structure. Is that sort of like, how do you get that high? No pun intended, or maybe I do intend this pun, but how do you find that high again? Like, how do you go on and get impressed by your projects when that's where you started almost?
Well, you know, Mike, I think you're just chasing the jobs, just chasing the projects, and um, you know, there's other fantastic jobs that we did in the city. I mean, walk around there and look at what's been built. It's awesome what's been built. Like, and they're all unique in their own way. Like, we did work in the subways, you know, underground. I went up north and worked underground. We did gold mines and nickel mines, and you know, like
What's going on over there, Jack? Is that is that an alarm?
Yeah, no, yeah, it was a FaceTime from my son. I'm turning them off. There you go.
Well, you got to take that. Okay.
Everything we did, I was an apprentice, so I was pretty. In those days, an apprentice was low on the scale of, so you get humbled pretty quickly. Doesn't matter where you worked, right? And you had to go to school. Like, I had to go to school. Had a great group of friends, a great crew that we worked with, you know, that sort of traveled around in the city while I was an apprentice. Once you're a journey person, you can get out of Dodge when you wanna. Leave town, go and work wherever you need to go and work, and I did that. And then, you know, I met my wife, and she sort of makes you grounded, right? Wives they can humble you in 5 seconds, right? So Yeah, 45 years later, I'm still being humbled. So
Jack, amazing. How many kids you got?
I got two. I have my daughter turned 42 yesterday, and she's headed to the city with her man for her birthday. And I have a 40-year-old son, and I have two grandkids. Um, and we're lucky that they're all close where we live here. They're all Our daughter lives in Collingwood. Our son lives near Thornbury, and yeah. So
Amazing.
yeah,
So when you're downtown, or you don't even have to be downtown. Okay, so maybe I'll start with this: that I don't know our skyline without the CN Tower. Like it's always been this like this beacon. Like, and I bike this city like crazy, and you can see it from everywhere. You can see it from so far away. Like it's just the CN Tower is
we
visible.
could, yeah, Mike. We could see Niagara Falls. You could see the mist from Niagara Falls across the lake on a clear morning. You could go up on the tower, and we could look. We could look across on top of the clouds, and there was mornings where there were only two cranes sticking out of the clouds, and that was the two cranes that were on the Bank of Montreal. There's pictures of that. I got to meet Boris Remo, the famous photographer for the Toronto Star. Like he gave cameras to people to take pictures. Like he is awesome. If you search some of the pictures that he took in the Star, and then we had an old guy. I wish I could remember his name. He came up. He came up with his camera. He would take pictures and sell them for 25 cents. So if you were working, he'd take a picture and you had to give him a quarter, right? And he'd come back the next day with an envelope full of pictures. So you give him like $5, you get 20 pictures. I wish we had all those pictures. Trust me. He was a great old guy.
So when you see the CN Tower, are you able to show any restraint, or do you have to tell your grandkids, your kids, and just say, "I built that"?
No, they all know. The kids told him, "Hey, Grandpa, that's a nice tower." And we're going to a hockey game or a football or a baseball game, right? Going to a baseball game. Grandpa, they have $1 hot dogs today, right? It's Tuesday. Can we go get some? They've been up there. They get it. Maybe one day when they're older, doesn't matter, Mike. Like it, we know the guys, and there weren't many women in there, but I'm sure there were a few involved. The guys know who did that work, and we probably need to have a reunion while I'm sitting here talking to you, and we can do that because we're a unionized contractor. So the unionized contractor pays, and the guys get their pensions and benefits from the pension benefit office, so they know who's alive and who's dead, right? So if we could find them, and that would be super cool. I
Well,
think we
Jack,
need to do that.
that's a great
Yeah,
idea because we mentioned the grand opening was June 1976, which means next June is the 50th anniversary of the grand opening to the public. That would be a
yeah,
great time to have this reunion.
it would be.
All right, CN Tower should do something about this. Okay, so looking back, final thoughts, Jack, and then we'll touch base on what you're up to these days. I got to know what the Ontario Erectors Association is, but you have I guess I'm curious for the sense of pride you must have, especially on this 50th birthday when there's so much attention on the CN Tower, like the awareness of this vision. What pride do you have, and do you feel like Toronto today has the same ambition, the same vision it had in the 70s to build such a unique and wonderful structure?
Oh, that's a lot of questions, Mike. I'm old. I only have so much retention.
All right, so first start with the any sense of pride. Just
Yeah, I think when you look back, it's not the height of the building, and it is, I guess, but like people build stuff, and we're so fortunate we get to build cool stuff. We do. Our industry gets to build cool stuff, whether it's the 7 million square feet of a battery plant, or the longest suspension bridge in North America, down at the Gordie Howe. I think, but it's the people. It's the people. That's what it is. People build cool stuff, and owners of construction companies take big risks and spend their money and build cool stuff. We build cool stuff. And the crew on the CN Tower, and hopefully even today, the crew shows up every day, Mike, every day, just like you do. You get up in the morning, you put your mic on, your headphones on, you say, okay, who am I going to talk to today? But the crew shows up every day. Trust is so big. You have to know what your partner's doing, because everybody's joined up. You have to know what your crew's doing. You have to know what the plan is. And you just get the work done. I think that's the whole story right there, buddy. The whole story.
In 2025, does Toronto have it in itself to build something as ambitious and visionary as the CN Tower?
Yeah, I think so. Like, look what we're doing at the Portlands at the bottom of the river there. And look at those cool bridges, the super cool painted bridges. And if you're a bike rider, you're riding there all the time. And, as much as, Ford's a little bit sketchy on what's going on at Ontario Place, could be cool. Could be a cool place to go. Think we need to get rid of the airport. This is my political thing. We need to get rid of the airport and build a park, and we need a steel bridge.
I've been
steel bridge to the island.
Jack, that's what I've been touting. I want to be able to bike to the island.
Okay, I have a motorcycle, so I could ride over there.
I have a kayak. That's how I got to get there.
There you go. We have, hey, you got to know, I have 2 kayaks hanging in the garage. Like, we live in Thornbury, right. Beaver River. We fish, we hunt, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And you're also the president of the Ontario Erectors Association. What the heck is that, Jack?
Okay, so we're an employer bargaining agency. That's what we do. So I represent, there's probably 300 specialty steel contractors in Ontario. So all those steel buildings, all those warehouses, everything you see that's steel, that's one of our contractor association, member of our contractor association. We're associate members with the Canadian Institute of Steel Construction. So, they're the engineering group that build all that. We're the guys that put it up. So, and we're mainly in 1979 or 1980, the provincial government mandated that the contractor associations had to bargain with the unions, with all the skilled trade building trades unions. So iron workers, sheet metal workers, carpenters, pipe fitters, sprinkler fitters, sheet metal, roofers. There's a bunch of them. And right now, May 2025, we're in negotiations with our friends in the union. And I sit at the table. I represent our contractors. I sit on the contractor side, and we negotiate with our friends in the union for the ironworkers and the operating engineers, so crane operators. We're bargaining it with them right now. Hopefully, we don't have a strike.
Well, here's hoping. But you've been at it over 50 years. Any plans to retire so you can do more kayaking and hiking and fishing?
Rosie says I can retire, but she's not sure where I'm going to live. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm still a happy guy. I still like doing what I'm doing. I love the industry. Yeah, it's good.
Well, I hope you get that reunion going for next June. And thank you so much for this. I loved revisiting what we did 50 years ago. And I got to say, you build a hell of a tower, man. I love seeing it on my rides. It's a beacon of the city, and it's important to all us Torontonians. So good job there, buddy.
Very cool. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's love. I love telling stories because my kids and my friends don't want to hear them anymore.
Well, a lot of people are going to hear it now. So Jack Mesley, thanks for this, and happy 50th birthday to the one-time world's tallest freestanding structure, the CN Tower.
Right. Thanks for having me, Mike.